Hello, my name's Nicole Smith and I'm one of the Aboriginal Learning Facilitators here at the Tasmanian Museum and Art Gallery. Today we are in Ningina, and I'll be talking about traditional female cultural practices. Ningina, as you might have noticed, isn't in English. It's in a language known as Palawakani, and it means to give knowledge and understanding. Knowledge and understanding about Tasmanian Aboriginal people and their culture. So I'm going to virtually welcome you to this space in the language Palawakani. But first, Palawakani is a composite language, and it's made up of the bits and pieces left behind after a period known as the Black War that happened here in Tasmania. So it's made of about 3 or 4 language or dialects that were originally spoken. So here I'm going to give you that welcome. Miladina Nika, Miladina Muanina, Miladina Manamapali, Nara Makara Lumi, Warranta Makara Lumi, Yapakana Raichi, Karati, Pulingana Miladina, Pakana Manatu. So what I just said is, this here is Muanina country. This country is our country. It has always been here, and we have always been here. Hello, Tasmanian Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal friend. Please feel welcome to Aboriginal country. So the first thing I want to talk to you about today is kind of how our old people lived and huts. So here I am at the hut here in Ningina, and as you can see, it's quite small. It's not to scale. In fact, in real life, the whole space that I'm actually standing in now would be covered by this hut. It would be dug 1 metre into the ground to give it an even temperature, because when you do that, it isolates and makes the temperature quite even, so for warmth purposes. And a hole would be at the top of the hut to let obviously smoke out, because a small hearth of coals would be inside, so you could cook your shellfish as well. On the floor in the hut would lay grasses, or feathers from a mutton bird or swan, and furs, such as this one here, laying on the bottom, like that. The fur I have here is a paddy melon fur, and I think it's from the fern tree area, and you can tell because it's actually quite thick. And when we tell the quality of a fur, we always use the back of our hand because it's the most sensitive. So we run it down like that. That tells us it's great fur. On the west coast, these huts were predominantly found, and we know that by the midden site that's left behind, the donut midden shape. Whale bones were also utilised as hut structures, and when a hut structure is made, we can steam tea tree, for example, because you would need to think about the environment that these were constructed in. So tea tree would have been steamed by the fire, bent, and then drove into the ground to give it that hut shape, or that dome shape. They were more permanent structures. So windbreaks and half-dome shelters were also created for that shorter term stay. As I spoke to you before just about middens, I have some shells here. Here I have 2 types of abalone. This one here is a lot flatter and smoother, and this is a green lip abalone. It's also mostly found on the northern parts of the state because the temperature is a lot warmer in the water for them. This one here, it's a lot rougher. And this is actually a black lip abalone, so there's 2 types here in Tasmania. And this one can be found everywhere. Here I have a native oyster or an Angassi oyster. And it's a lot different to the ones that you kind of see in restaurants with the jagged edge. They are the Pacific oyster, and they're not native here to Tasmania. The Angassi oyster is. So this is what it would have been within a midden and be found and utilised and eaten. Here I have a periwinkle or a warriner, and just imagine the coal fire hearth inside the hut. This would be sitting inside, cooking upside down like that. And you know it's ready because a little lid pops up, so the animal is like a snail. A little lid pops up and it tells you it's ready. You grab a stick, twist it the other way, and then, a bit of protein. So these shells would have been found in the midden. So when you look at a midden, particularly the ones on the west coast because they are so large, they're actually, the size of this roof. So when you look at them, it's like a menu. It tells you what food sources are in the environment, what's nearby, so you can eat and sustain your family and tribe. Also, it's a place where, for generations, families and a community has been visiting. So it tells a story. Middens are actually a place where our ancestors are buried as well. So you're returning them to the earth. They're cremated there. So we want to visit that place to remember them and celebrate their life. Here I have some images of middens that remain down at South Arm here in Tasmania, and they're getting destroyed by the rising sea levels, but you can still see the layers. And I imagine a layer represents a generation of people coming to that place to eat. Now, I did say I was going to talk about female cultural practices, so I'm going to just show you two images of traditional Aboriginal people. This one here is Manalagana, and I just want to highlight the fact that he has long hair. And here is an image of Truganini, and I just want to show the fact that she has short hair. Now, if you spend all your time in the water doing water-based activities, it makes sense, doesn't it, to have short hair? You don't want to have a wet hair flapping around. So that's why women had short hair. They also had bigger lung capacity and more visceral body fat to keep warm. So that's why they spent predominantly most of the time in the water. So they'll be diving for things such as abalone, mussels, crayfish, all those sorts of things. Women also mined ochre. So ochre is the blood of Mother Earth. Not only is it a spiritual connection to her, but it's also a scientific connection. We layer our body with this to keep us windproof, waterproof and insect-proof, and for hunting purposes. So when we're chasing a possum or a wallaby, they can't pick up our scent. It hides the pheromones within our skin so we can't secrete it. So there's multiple layers here. And here I have a grindstone and muller. You just nap it off and then it would be kind of grinded down. If you've got a mortar and pestle at home, it's the same concept. As I said, our women did mostly the water-based activities, so that also included hunting for seals. So they would do this by hiding in a mass of rocks, and that could be called a seal hide. So you dip down into a rock and just kind of mimicking seal behaviour as well, to show that that the seals didn't perceive them as a threat. And then they'd strike them on the back of the neck or even in the water, manipulating their behaviour too. Our women also climbed trees to gather possums. So this perfectly weighted body here would be created by throwing it in a river or something and then visiting that river again to pick up the piece of wood that you've selected, because the water over time creates the body that you want to use. And so by napping it at the ends as well, creates the weightedness in it spins. You can strike your animal. Here I have an image of a place known as Wyberlena on Flinders Island. So after a period known as the Black War, 300 or so Aboriginal people were taken to this place. I prefer to be called a prison because it had bars on windows, but other people may call it a camp or a settlement. As you can see here in the background, this is the only image we have of Wyberlena. But it's to talk about my relative Fanny Cochrane-Smith's mother, Tango Nutra, who come from the northeast of Tasmania. We don't know who Fanny Cochrane-Smith's biological father is. He could be a sealer or he could be a man called Nicominic who was from Gun Carriage Island. So Fanny made some wax recordings with a man named Horace Watson. Horace Watson saw and heard these languages that she performed and approached Fanny because he thought of the significance that these languages might have if they were put onto wax recordings for them to utilise and for preservation. And so the wax recording here I have is actually about the springtime. And it's a celebration about the birds and the bees and all the environment kind of changing and bringing food and nutrition for people to kind of live and eat. And the dialect she is using, we don't really know if it's northeast language from her mother's homeland or if it's a multiple of dialects that were spoken at Wyberlena at the time. But here's a sample of the recording. So now I want to talk to you about kanalaicha, or shell necklace making. Here I have a traditional necklace kit, and in the top piece here, I actually have something called sinew, which is if you feel the tendons behind your knee or down in your ankle, the tendons that make us move, they're actually tendons removed from the tail of a kangaroo or wallaby and then twined together to make a string. Traditionally, that's how it was done, but also with, here I have a wallaby jaw. Imagine I'm the wallaby. Underneath its lip, there's a hidden tooth. Our old people knew that when it was sharpened, that it could puncture shells. So here I have a king mariner shell, and it's one of the most prized shells within our community because of its cultural value. And that was traditionally made by like that and then strung onto the sinew. When European people then came, the technologies that we had access to then changed as well. So we had access to needle and thread, like cotton. And this one here was made by Queen Flora, and it shows the usage of a needle and smaller shells being utilised for the necklace. Then we could use a lot of different shells, such as rice shells and cat's teeth, which are the size of a grain of rice, literally. And so it shows cultural evolution. We adapted to change. And these necklaces can take up to 2 years to make. They have to go through a process of gathering the shells and then refining them. Not all shells are then used because they've got to be a certain grade and quality. And also we've got to watch the seasons, and we only take what we need. We mustn't take really small shells because we need to ensure that there's enough for next time when we do our gathering. And so they go through a process of cleaning and grading until they're of high quality, and then they are used for necklace making. So here I have some bull kelp, and you might have found bull kelp at the beach before, but here I have some that's been vacuum sealed, just to show that its flexibility. Now, bull kelp was a key component in our culture because it was essentially our old people's drink bottle. Now, after 2 or 3 days with oxygen hitting the kelp out of the water, it goes hard like a plastic. So from bendy, flexible material to that. And it was our old people's drink bottle. Bull kelp is really sustainable as well. It grows about 10 to 12 centimetres every day. So there's an abundance of it. Also, depending on where it grows within the water, depends on its thickness and the colour. So if it's deeper down and a lot thicker, then the quality of the kelp will ensure a better quality water carrier. If it's a bit closer to the surface, it'll be lighter in colour and a lot thinner. So the wave action determines kind of its strength. We only use the kelp that's been washed up. We never take the live plant. Bull kelp is also full of something known as iodine. And so when you drink from it, it gives your body a natural process of iodine. So we believe that our old people didn't have thyroid issues because of this, because thyroid issues have been associated with a lack of iodine in your diet. That's why we have iodised table salt. And so here I have some bull kelp water carriers here, and also this one. So think about the environment. You might use tea tree to shape the sides, and then you might use a white flag iris to make a handle. And so they'd be carried around with you on country. So it's your drink bottle, carrying water for you. We didn't have McDonald's or Woolworths or Coles to have these things. So this was your resource. This was your drink bottle. So now I'm going to talk to you about trina, or baskets of grass. Now, this one here in Ningina Tanapri is made by Auntie Colleen Mundy, and she's used white flag iris for this one. When we think about our grass baskets, we need to think about what they would have been made for. So you can imagine one that would have been used as a dive bag would be quite large and strung around the neck. This would ensure you could gather your crayfish and abalone while you're in the water. You also want to be able to carry things around on country with you, because it's essentially a handbag. So you can carry your ochre, not only your stone tools, all the things that you needed with it in a daily kind of walk across terrain. Not only was white flag iris used, but rush, flax and lilies were also used as well. And the way it's done is twined together, but it's the opposite to, say, Arnhem Land, where they use a Z stitch technique. We use an S stitch technique. So it's the opposite way in its way it's done. These baskets actually take a long time to make because it's something that we don't practice anymore. We don't do it every day. So they actually take a lot of time and effort, and things you've got to think about while you're making them. That's all we have time for today, and I just want to thank TasNetworks for sponsoring these videos.